those that are being educated in other parts of the world. The spiritual practice of generosity has been strong in the life of this congregation. We are thankful. We're mindful of that continuing, and just asking you to be praying and discerning how God would call you forward in that place of generosity. We are mindful that God is always with us, upholding us and guiding us, and giving us, calling us into the places of service. Let us be attentive. Let us be ready to serve. We listened to the passage of Scripture today, and mindful that Sylvia had signed up to be here to read, but ended up in the hospital this past week. And so Jan has gladly and thankfully stepped in to read the Scripture for us today.
I'm reading from Luke 13, verses 31 to 35. At that time, some Pharisees came to Jesus and said to him, "Leave this place and go somewhere else. Herod wants to kill you." He replied, "Go tell that fox, I will keep on driving out demons and healing people today and tomorrow, and on the third day I will reach my goal. In any case, I must press on today and tomorrow and the next day, for surely no prophet can die outside Jerusalem. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you who kill the prophets and stone those sent to you, how often I have longed to gather your children together, as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, and you were not willing. Look, your house is left to you desolate. I tell you, you will not see me again until you say, 'Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord.'"
Our gospel hymn for today is number 669 in the hymn book, "Jesus, Lover of My Soul."
Thy
pause to reflect on this passage of Scripture and the life of our ministry here at Tsawwassen United Church, I appreciate the picture that Mary has chosen for our slide screen today. A hand reaching out, a hand touching, contact, showing compassion, a blessing, just a gift of being with each other. This morning we continue in our readings in the Gospel of Luke in this Lenten season and the journey to the cross and beyond. As we take a look at chapter 13, verses 31 to 35, today in this passage, we'll take note of two types of opposition against Jesus and learn why he was not concerned about either one of them. Interesting thought for us to hold on to as we begin. Our prayer is that Christ's followers would follow what Christ modeled for us and apply it to our lives. So these oppositions that I named, one is we might call it a secular opposition. Jesus is on his way to the cross in Jerusalem. He still has a while to go, but as he approached, moved towards Jerusalem, some of the Pharisees say to him, "Get away from here. Get away from Herod. He wants to kill you." Jesus, in this verse, is made aware of a secular opposition. If something is secular, then it means non-religious. In this case, it is from governmental authority. Herod was the governor. This Herod was an interesting one because he's mentioned here as it's Herod Antipas. He was the tetrarch, the governor of Galilee during the time of Jesus' ministry. And this is the same man who locked John the Baptist in prison and had him beheaded. This Herod is not to be confused with Herod the Great, Herod Antipas' father. He was the ruler of Judea when Jesus was born. And we know from Scripture the threats and the actual things that were carried out by him, even in the statement of the slaughter of children. Herod Antipas was a crafty, cunning, cruel, and deceitful ruler. He cared little for others and greatly about himself. We know that Herod wanted to see Jesus, but we now learn that Herod wants Jesus dead. Most likely, Herod wanted Jesus dead because he viewed him as a potential rival. Here he was, a preacher, gaining a huge following in a very short time. Consider Jesus' response. A little bit of an insight into another side of Jesus. When I first read it, I thought, oh my goodness, I never really thought of it that way. What did Jesus say in response? Go and tell that fox, we could add any kind of other words in there, to back off. Well, that's not the words that Scripture said, but basically that's what Jesus is saying. Tell him to go away. Behold, I cast out demons and I perform cures today and tomorrow, and the third day, and I will finish my course. I will stay true to what I am here to do. Jesus understood his opposition was cunning like a fox, but calmly showed that this opposition will not stop him from carrying out his mission of redemption. Jesus told them to tell Herod that he was not worried about the threat and that he will not stop working until the work is done. interesting piece of how would we hear that and follow Jesus in like manner. The religious opposition. It is interesting to note that Jesus quickly turns his attention away from Herod, because he's not worried about him at all. Jesus indicates that the main opposition against him comes not from Galilee, but from Jerusalem. Jerusalem in this passage represents the religious authorities who were filled with fury and discussed with one another what they might do to Jesus. And as we know through other scripture passages, they certainly challenged him in questioning and pushing him to express and to clarify his teachings and why would he say such things. But there was also this undercurrent moving toward, and we see it as he gets closer and closer to the cross, to crucify him. Nonetheless, Jesus says, I must go on my way today and tomorrow and the day following that, for it cannot be that a prophet should perish away from Jerusalem. 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 We hear Jesus' heart being spoken outright to the people around him. The city that kills prophets and stones those who are sent to it. How often would I have gathered your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wing, and you were not willing. Behold, your house is forsaken. Jesus is talking about the religious, about those who claim to follow in God's way. But in their practice and in their showing of the way that they did that, Jesus was saying that they didn't follow. You were unwilling. You're unwilling to hear the call of God and to step into it. Jesus knows the cross is coming. In Luke 9:53 we read, when the days draw near for him to be taken up, he set his face to go to Jerusalem. He was focused on his call to ministry. Jesus recognizes the threat of that Herod posed, but acknowledged the greater threat to his life, Jerusalem, the religious place. Jesus isn't worried about Herod because Herod has no jurisdiction over Jerusalem, only Galilee. And in this passage we see that Jesus encountered religious opposition wherever he went, whether it was in questions about the Sabbath actions that he allowed to happen, in complete, at least in their understanding, opposition to the law of God. And the forgiveness of sins and the way that he would forgive, they couldn't understand it. They couldn't grasp it. They lived by the Old Testament law, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. There was always religious authorities who opposed Jesus. And there have been throughout history that have opposed the teachings of the church. And that is what Jerusalem represents, the religious authorities who are seeking to kill Jesus because they hated him for his teaching. Like Herod, the most likely reason the religious authorities wanted Jesus dead was because they viewed him as a rival. Jesus' response to the religious authorities is instructive for us. He rebuked them. The religious authorities had strayed far from God and were actually hindering the work of God. And this is why Jesus uses the image of a hen gathering her brood, the work of God, the people of God coming together in the safety of God's blessing and guiding them into the ministry that would happen in the world. But Jerusalem seeking to prevent it at every corner. Jesus told Jerusalem that your house is forsaken. because of your stubborn opposition. But other than these two kinds of opposition, secular opposition or religious opposition, Jesus had a divine commission. He had a purpose. He was there for a reason. Jesus faced two main types of opposition during his earthly ministry, secular and religious. What is remarkable is that Jesus is not concerned about either, but continues to do the work he is called to do. The reason is found in verse 35.